Okay, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Finance Committee on May 13th, 2025 at 5:04 PM. I'll start with roll call. Alder Johnson.
Here.
Alder Galvin.
Here.
Alder Hinkfist.
Here.
And myself for present. Entertain a motion of approval of the
So
agenda.
moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Entertain a motion of approval of minutes.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. On to regular business. Number one, consideration with possible action on a request by Alder Johnson, Profit, and Morgan regarding the consideration of possible action to authorize a grant of $500,000 for the new community shelter capital campaign project to expand transitional housing capacity, and $300,000 for the JBS Urban Farm Barn project to match a grant award submitted by Willow. Funding source $750,000 from ARPA allocation for site acquisition for affordable housing and $50,000 from ARPA interest. Alder Johnson, do you want to start?
Sure. Alder Eck here was giving me a real hard time about my misspelling of Bill Morgan. So I'm a little disappointed that you didn't correct that for me.
It's not Logan, it's Morgan.
So this is, as you guys know, this came up recently, was a request for $750,000 of the ARPA funding from the sort of, I don't know the exact name of that fund, but it was the site acquisition / affordable housing development.
That's probably Cheryl's.
You know, in the JBS project being over budget, right, they needed some additional help to be able to do that farm. Willow wrote a grant. It was slightly north of $300,000. Again, might have the exact number, but what we, you know, I didn't feel comfortable with all of that funding going towards a barn because that wasn't necessarily the intent of what we were trying to do there, and it was really about trying to create additional affordable housing options in our community. I had originally positioned it as site acquisition, recognizing that site control is oftentimes one of those biggest barriers. But in this case here, the way this request is submitted, obviously we're aware now publicly of a project that New Community Shelter is doing, which is critically important. The city had worked with them around HUD funding, but HUD funding has a lot of restrictions. And unfortunately, the way that their operational model exists, the HUD funding wasn't eligible. And I know that was the case with some of the HUD county funds as well. So when the county opted to allocate their $3.5 million towards a project in the city, my hope is that we could use our funds to help the shelter along with this project. And, you know, they still have a gap, they can speak to that. But what I wanted to do and why I coupled these together is because there's $750,000 left in that fund. Originally it was $1 million. We already peeled off $250,000 for I think it was Rock the Block and, you know, kind of another initiative there. And I wanted to make sure that we looked at this holistically before we kept sort of, you know, piecemealing this down. Conversation I had with Director Ditchite as well as Natalie Bomstead from Wello, you know, is that this level of funding for that urban barn would still allow them to achieve what they're trying to do. If we could perhaps, if we don't have to utilize the construction contingency, then you might even be able to build it out fully, rather than just sort of what this match would do, which is sort of get you at phase one, right, out of that project. I think $500,000 is meaningful, and the reason Alder Profit and Alder Morgan are on here is because JBS is obviously in Alder Morgan's district, and the shelter is in Alder Profit's district. So I spoke with both of them, you know, about kind of presenting this together, and that's why it was presented the way that it is. So obviously I support the project, why I put it in here. I know Director Ellenbecker, one question I had posed, and I didn't know if you had an opportunity to look at it, and I'll let staff kind of take turns on who needs to speak when, but I just wanted verification if the ARPA allocation would have any additional requirements around housing like HUD did, or if we could simply just allocate it towards the project. And then it could be used, you know, at their discretion to, as long as the funds went in. I didn't expect that it would be a simple, here's $500,000, right? I would expect that if we support it, that staff would work with them on some type of agreement, right, that makes everybody whole or supported from a regulatory perspective.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if I have the answer. I don't know. I will at some point refer it over to Director Sherwin, your wig. But I don't know if you want that answer now or if you want to.
No, I mean, I just want to give high level, right? That's where I was coming from and why I presented both of these things coupled together. And, you know, so I know, crossing multiple departments here, so however you want them to go, I'm good with.
Thank you. So we've gotten guidance from HUD, and you understand HUD is under scrutiny right now, right? So they're kind of being very cautious with a lot of things. But we've received guidance that they are operating with those ARPA affordable housing dollars under the same guidelines as they are with home and HUD, which would make that a problem to fund this project. That being said, we have TDA funding available that we could fund this project with. Because I think the ask is for $500,000, and we have, and the TDA is a tax increment district affordable housing. Those are local tax levy that doesn't have those HUD restrictions on them. I think the cleanest way to go if you want to support this project would be to do $500,000 of TDA funding. And then they'd fill out an application. I think I heard their gap is like $2 million, so I'm sure they'd meet the, the gap requirement for that funding. And then they wouldn't have to worry about, this ambiguity with ARPA funds 6 months down the line coming down away. How did you fund this? You fund this, well, they can't use this because of the way they're going to manage their project. So that's my
How much is in that TDA
step.
fund?
Right now we have $830,000 in TDA.
And that's cash balance?
Yes, because we have some obligations, I think, but $830,000.
And how do you calculate maximum eligibility on that?
Well, we have an application form we fill out for TDA. We've done a variety of different things. We've funded the Broadway project, Garrett Bader's project on Broadway and Walnut, depending on their costs and their gaps. That was 7 units. We funded the Fort. We funded a number of larger projects. So we look at their pro forma, what their gap amount is. And they're not, they're not in a TIF. They're not using any TIF money, so it'd be an eligible project. But I mean, it's a great project. It's, it's definitely needed housing, especially at that level. But I just have concerns about those regulations with ARPA and how we've been directed.
Okay, yeah, and I'm less
That
concerned
makes
about
sense.
where the funding comes from. I'm more concerned
Right.
about providing the support.
Right, and that's why I'm thinking that the TDA funds would be an easier, I think, ask. And it'd be cleaner for them and for us as well.
Can that be a plan B, though?
Well, let's let the maybe other departments
Okay.
speak, and then I'd like to hear from the shelter as well. So,
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like me to come up and talk about?
Yeah, if you want to speak to the barn, yeah.
Sure. So as you know, Wello received a grant of $316,000 to provide additional support for the urban farm at JBS. As part of that, we would be required to do a match of $309,000. So it's roughly a 50-50 match, but we're a little bit less. So I know in your original proposal, it was to take $50,000 out of contingency, or not contingency, it was out of
Interest.
ARPA interest. We would actually need $59,000 to hit the match if we were to allocate $250,000 out of this ARPA account. Just a little additional information in regards to what this money would go towards. So it would go towards building the urban barn itself. So anything needed associated with the farm, storage and food production capacity. What it would not be enough money for is public restrooms. So right now, unless the full $750,000 was allocated towards this project, we would only have enough money to do the barn. So we would still have, in the temporary measure, we would have porta potties out there at JBS until at which time we could secure additional funding to build public restrooms. So for $309,000, we would just get the barn itself. One other just clarification here, so the committee knows, is the grant that Wello received was a federal grant, and so we can't match federal funding with federal funding. So what I would propose to do is, if you make a formal motion here, that if you agree to put this ARPA money towards the barn project, you actually instead allocate it to the JBS project as a whole. We do have other funding in the JBS project that we can use as a match, but if we spend it, we have to fill that gap somehow. So just keep that in mind, that I wouldn't make the motion to actually use this money for the barn itself. It would go towards the JBS project as a whole.
I appreciate that distinction, Dan. Obviously, I think you and I talked about
Yeah.
that, but the one question that I do have, though, and I'm looking on the city's website, because that $1 million was put into that bucket, and what I'm trying to wrap my brain around and what I'm looking for are the guidelines around that, right? Because, I mean, to fund a barn versus affordable housing, two different things. And we've got HUD guidelines that are being applied to the affordable housing project. How does that, like, if we allocate the same funding towards the JBS project, is JBS now subject to those same HUD guidelines? And if not, why not?
Well, we can put this money specifically for the park development too, if there's a concern.
Well,
Because
that's what
there
I'm
are,
looking for the guidelines, right? Is this affordable housing and/or park development?
well, we actually have two different construction contracts. So the first one is all the road infrastructure, and that one's debatable whether or not it's housing related. The other contract is literally just to build the park and the boulevard park. So we could use this money specifically to pay that second contract, which is the construction of the park, which I think is an eligible expense because we've put other ARPA money into other park projects, so.
Right, but those were funds that were allocated before the end of last year to those projects. This is an entirely different bucket and had to be allocated to that bucket. So is this bucket park eligible?
And I think that when it was, and maybe Diana can expand on that, but I think when it was allocated, it was for housing or park projects. Maybe it's not listed that way on the website, but I believe that that's how it was approved.
Is that
I
on
can
the motion?
verify that before Tuesday.
I apologize, I don't know, I did not research that $1 million. I mean, I may have to refer back to the director and she knows the guidelines, if that is restricted dollars and what it was for. I apologize, I don't have that information in front of me.
Because again, that was an allocation, right, to be in alignment with federal guidelines. Right, because those all had to be allocated within those certain areas by the end of
Correct.
last year. So we can't just move them now, is my understanding. That's why I'm asking if that federal allocation, where we put that $1 million, allowed for park development.
I apologize, I don't know if it's in the economic impact up section or if it was under the $10 million unrestricted. Director, when you're ready, do you know?
Yeah, I mean, it was used for affordable housing, so it met the guidelines we were using originally. I'm not sure about the park.
Yeah, and I only brought up the park because when it was set aside, it said for planning purposes or park purposes, so.
Okay.
That's how the funding was approved by the city council. So we'll have to check on that.
Yeah, we can circle back on that one, Dan, for your purposes. But
Sure.
others, I would make a motion to open the floor and hear from interested parties.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Floor is now open.
Alder Hinkes, how is your cold?
My cold is good.
Good, because I think you gave it to me.
Oh.
City council night. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be able to tell you more about our project. Chris is passing out. I was very excited, we just got the sketches last week, end of last week, so that was exciting.
Can we get your name and address, please?
Your name and address.
Oh, Terry Repstard, 1342 11th Avenue. So if you flip through this, you'll see it's a $14,000 or $1 million project. I'm excited about it because I look at our program as, you know, people come in our emergency program. Some will go up to our transitional apartments. We have 20. They will pay a program fee there, and most will move out into the community and do fine. There's a group of people that move out into the community and don't do fine. I always describe it as, it's kind of like putting a fifth grader in an apartment and, you know, call the buddies over and, you know, the whole deal. So what I've always dreamed about is rounding off this program in a way that there was an apartment setting similar to any other apartment where people paid rent, but they had to graduate from the new community shelter. Not to say that they have to go from the emergency floor to transitional to the apartments. They very well could go from the emergency program straight to the apartments. I never wanted to be a landlord. Never, never, never. So with that said, if I'm going to be one, you can be assured that these are going to be probably the best tenants in Green Bay, because they are going to go through a rigid lifestyle, life skills program at the shelter. They're going to, case managers will recommend individuals, and individuals will apply to the apartments, and a group of case managers, staff, and myself will see who goes into the apartments. They'll sign a lease. They'll meet with a case manager once a month or more, and that will be less of a meeting and more of a check of how are you doing, are you healthy, if the apartment looks a little messy, to get a sense of are you doing well. We're not going to require sobriety throughout the building, because not everyone has issues with alcohol or drugs. So that will be the case manager's job to, at those meetings, do an assessment and get a sense of if maybe things are going the wrong way. We have 700 to 800 people going through our program annually. So we certainly have a population that's going to fill that building. I don't look at this, there's going to be 41 units. I don't look at this as a permanent home for the majority. However, there is some of our elderly population that I think will be there longer term. Others may want a garden, may want a pet, may want to get married, that type of thing, and we'll move on. We're going to set the foundation for continued recovery, for stability and growth. Everyone deserves the dignity of a home, and the people who move into these apartments will have earned that opportunity. Let's see. We will be charging rent, I believe, around $800. People who can get housing assistance, we will certainly allow that. One of the things that I think I'm the most proud of with this project is that neighborhood is an eyesore. And I always tell my staff and residents at resident meetings, I want the nicest looking house on the block. That's inside, that's outside. So everyone that lives at the shelter has a chore and helps make that happen. We had a neighborhood meeting. We had no issues with the neighbors, and I started by saying, whatever you've experienced with the new community shelter in the last 21 years, you will experience as we build this new apartment complex. But getting back to the eyesore, I feel proud on behalf of our organization that we are going to create a neighborhood that's going to be safe, it's going to be well kept up, and I can tell you now, I've been working on the process of contaminants and the asbestos thing. I wanted to let Habitat for Humanity come in and take, anything they could use. I was told by our construction company, do not let anybody in those houses. So people moved out of those, and the condition of, so it's kind of cool. I mean, it's neat helping people in our community, helping people in Brown County, and rejuvenating a neighborhood. Question?
You've made great improvements down there from what
Thank
it
you.
was 20 years ago, and it's beautiful as you're
Thank
driving
you.
down towards the end of Broadway.
Not
so-
without the help of this community, I'll tell
I
you.
know, I agree, but you're achieving your goal.
Thank you, Terry, for coming in, and, I think what you guys are doing is needed. I mean, desperately needed, right? And I think we've talked about this, and there, other projects in the community, and yours is just, every single one of them has a slightly different version, but I think your version is, in partnership with the shelter and creating that transition, I think is really important. The $14 million goal that you have established, how much have you raised to date?
12, a little over 12.
Okay, so I just wanted to verify, someone had mentioned the 2 million gap, I wanted to verify that, so, okay. Do you have a sense of, I've heard, I guess I've heard it said that you're probably not going to break ground until all the funds are raised?
Yes, we
Okay.
will not break ground until, right.
Okay, and the reason I was asking, I wanted to know if you had a sense of timeline, but timeline's probably when you raise it.
Well, you can help me with that.
Yep.
Goody.
That's the intent, so.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Anything else?
It's usually a good sign. Means you did a good job.
Jerry, I'd just like to say that I think this is, again, like it's been said before, this is an important block that's missing from our process. And I remember when I was the community police captain, we worked with Brown County Health and Human Services to identify those, what was it, a dozen of the.
The most chronic, yeah.
And it worked for a while and then it failed. And I think because it didn't have what you're going to be providing.
Structure. Yeah.
Right, structure, accountability, and the ability to help them get past where they are right now. And that takes time. It's not a 30-day deal. You know, like you said, it could be a while. And some may be there for quite a while. And I get that. But I think this is something I'm eager to see happen. I think it could become a model. As, you know, throughout the United States, we all struggle with homelessness. And so I'm in favor of this, and I hope we
Thank
can
you.
push it through.
I've been telling our donors, someday, I'm going to be on Good Morning America and talking about this amazing model that we're going to use throughout the country. But thank you, Bill.
And I want to echo some of Alder's comments, especially for
Do
the
you have questions for the
advancements
speaker?
that you've made. Do I have questions?
Questions for the speaker?
The only question I have is,
Dropping the hammer.
you're looking at
Sorry.
41 now, that 41 apartments, and then you'll rotate. What do you think your turnover will be? As people rotate into the community, outside?
That's a good question. I think it's all going to determine upon the individuals themselves. We're going to, we're not going to be able to take the ones with the severe mental health issues or severe things. So, but the others, that's a good question, Kathy. I don't
Okay,
have
I was
the
just
answer to
curious.
that, but that's a good question for my case managers.
Well, and I think it'll probably be as things develop and move on, but yeah,
Yep.
I'm sure there's a
Yep.
national standard out there. So. But thank you.
Alderack?
Yes, I'm wondering, do you have, I know you don't want to start until you have the money raised, do you have like a goal of that date? Unfortunately, costs go
Well-
up, obviously,
I'm June,
of this year.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, to start,
Yeah.
to break ground, June, July. What do you think, Jim?
Like, we have money queued up, another $1 million, that's, right? We feel very, very comfortable.
Yeah.
They have to go to the committees and vote, not committees, the families, so. The timing on this is actually critical, because we made a commitment to our board that we will not break ground until all the money's there. I would say, at the end of this week, we'll probably be within $1 million.
True.
Outstanding.
Yeah, and I think,
Oh, wonderful. Any other questions for the speaker?
well, no, because I wasn't asking questions.
All right.
Any other questions for the speaker? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I think someone on mine yet. Do you want me to
Sure.
say her name?
Sure.
It's Tara, right?
Yeah, Tara.
Tara, if you'd like to speak?
Good evening. So my name is Tara, and I'm speaking on behalf of Wello today. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I want to start by acknowledging that I do understand and appreciate this committee support for the mission and vision of the JBS site redevelopment and the Urban Barn. I know that the conversation at this point is not about alignment, it's more about funding allocation and appropriation. So with that being said, I'd still like to offer a little bit more context to illustrate why this investment matters to the community. Over the past several years, Wello has invested more than $500,000 to lay the groundwork for what's now becoming a nationally recognized what I should say today has nationally been recognized as a model of food systems transformation. These funds have supported everything from site activation to strategic visioning to community engagement, infrastructure planning, and pilot programming. And what began as a bold, small idea has become functional and forward-thinking, an initiative that directly benefits the people of Green Bay. In fact, these farmers that it impacts, many of them are immigrant growers and make up 60% of the produce vendors at the Green Bay farmers markets. They are the backbone, I want to say they are the backbone of our local fresh food supply. But yet, despite their critical role in our food supply, they're among the least likely to own farmland, equipment, or homes. And for me, when I think about it, without equitable access to economic opportunity, the dream of homeownership remains out of reach. And that's true for entire neighborhoods on the east side of Green Bay, where systemic underinvestment has persisted for decades. We often talk about housing development as a priority, and I absolutely agree with that. It is 100%. But without economic development to go with it, we're just building homes without building futures. A thriving local economy rooted in place-based industries like food and farming is essential for neighborhood stability and upward mobility. So that's why the next phase of this project, the development of a dedicated agricultural processing facility within the urban barn, is critical. That's why we wrote the RFSI grant, and that's why we were granted it, because they, at the federal level, believe in our project and they understand how critical it is for our people here. The space will allow small-scale growers to turn their fresh produce into value-added products that can reach new markets, sustain income beyond just the growing season, and spark business ownership. And this is how generational wealth really begins, in the form of infrastructure, opportunity, and investment. So we've already at Wello delivered culturally relevant farm business training, opened new sales channels, and co-created farm-led models for success. But we've now reached the stage where fiscal infrastructure is the barrier and the next opportunity. So this processing hub that will be positioned within the urban farm is something that Green Bay can take, and we can be a model for Wisconsin and even beyond, showing how cities can support socially disadvantaged farmers and members of our community through smart investment, inclusive design, and regional leadership. So we're asking the city to commit this matching fund, not just for the facility, but for what it really represents: ownership, dignity, shared prosperity in our community. So with this support, we're going to leverage. With this support, we're going to be able to leverage additional state and federal dollars and private funding to create a sustainable, successful, long-term economic impact. So with that being said, I just want to say thank you again for considering this request. And we really do look forward to partnering, further partnering with the city of Green Bay to make it equitable and community-rooted.
Any questions for our speaker?
Tyra, can
Thank
we just
you.
get your address for a record,
sorry.
please?
Sure. Address is 1706 Chateau Drive, Green Bay, Wisconsin, 54304.
Okay, anybody else from the public that wishes to speak?
Motion to close the floor.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Discussion then.
Yeah, I just want to get clarity on this, because again, I'm looking at the MOU that we did when we transferred $250,000 of the ARPA out of that RDA vacant parcels lot. And it referenced the June 25th allocation. And when I look back at the June 25th allocation, it very clearly states RDA vacant parcels. Doesn't make a reference to parks. So to your point though, Director Ditchite, could go towards the housing part or the vacant land piece, right? We could do some transfers behind the scene. But then it still goes back to the question of, do the HUD guidelines apply to the housing then that has to be built on that land? I don't want to create a problem for our developer over there, right?
I think we're okay with the development. This isn't a block grant target area, looking at the map right now, so it certainly meets those requirements for.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the biggest challenge with the HUD guideline was sort of just, you had to be, anyone could apply, right? But because with the new community shelter, right, it's more of that
Right.
transitional programming, right?
Exactly.
And that was
Exactly.
the issue, right?
That was the issue, was right, that, I can totally get the management and how that works, makes
Right.
total sense, but HUD is saying, well, wait a minute, you're not opening it up to everyone.
Right.
Right, which, so they had concerns about that. I just would rather be safe than sorry and fund it in a means that we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, no, and I'm good with that piece,
That's
Cheryl.
my
I just want to make
concern.
sure that we, if we say, hey, we're going to put this towards JBS and the urban barn stuff, that we're not creating a problem, right?
Right, that's like a different, right.
Right.
Question, right.
Okay. And I'd offer a motion unless somebody else has anything else to add.
I think it's a great use of resources, so
Okay.
figuring out how you're gonna shuffle it around.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we authorize $500,000 into DA funds for the new community shelter project, subject to receipt of application and compliance there. And an additional, what was the exact number, Dan?
309.
An additional $309,000 for the JBS project. Just leave it at that, right? Okay.
Okay, do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Just for everybody's, this goes to council as a recommendation. Jim, I know you know that, but obviously unanimous support of the committee, that's a good step.
Thank you. Number 2, consideration of possible action on resolution authorizing and providing for the sale and issuance of up to $117,500 taxable general obligation promissory notes, Series 2025C, and all related details of safe drinking water loan program matched on behalf of water utility. Any
Motion to
questions
approve.
on this?
Second.
All right, any discussion?
I do have, is Brian here?
We actually
I-
have Stephanie Rogers here.
I did have a question, because in the report it said that there were still 90 lead pipes that need to be removed, yet we hosted that event where we celebrated all the lead pipes being removed. So help me understand
These
that.
are 90 private side, so these are citizens. The ones that we hosted back in 2020, that we had the big celebration, that was the public side. So that was all the utility
Okay.
owned. So these are private side in people's front yards.
So the private side
Yes,
is basically we are funding that, even though it's on private property?
yes.
In my recollection in the past at least was that we didn't do the private side. We focused on the public because we wanted private homeowners to do that.
Right, well, we were getting a grant. We cannot use ratepayer dollars for the water utility on private property. So we received grants from the DNR that were 100% principal forgiveness loans. Each year we've done that. So this year, because the money is coming from a different source at the EPA, the requirements are they will not give 100% principal forgiveness, only 75%. 25% has to either be paid by the property owner or the city or the water utility. But PSC does not allow us to use ratepayer funds. We have other funds such as interest earnings that we could use to pay for the private side, and that's what we're going to be using. But because this program is a municipal program, the PSC also says that the water utility cannot accept a loan for a municipal program. That's why it has to come through the city. We will pay the city back for the loan, or pay the loan.
So what other revenue do you have that's not ratepayer revenue?
Basically, interest earnings.
That's what I figured,
That's
okay.
it.
So, and this would basically cover 100% of the cost then?
For the property owner, yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And then do you have open lines of communication with those 90 property owners where you're
Yes.
ready to go?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have them identified, they have gotten letters from us. A lot of them have gotten contractors on the line right now. They're just waiting for us to get the funding so then they can get them replaced. This program goes through December of 2026. We're hoping all 90 will join in because it is basically free money. But there are still a few that we have holdouts on.
So essentially, they hire the contractor, and we just and they pay the contractor, but we provide like a
We
micro
pay the
grant.
contractor directly.
You do?
Yes.
Perfect, okay.
Yep.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I was on the Protection and Policy Committee when all this went through.
Mm-hmm.
Either I didn't have my listening ears on, or like Brian said, I thought it was all private and public. Have we been doing private pipes every year since 2020?
Since 2015, yes.
What's the reason for the holdout? Are they just holding out and not wanting to do it, or is there
Some of
plenty-
them we have found. We have 37,000 customers.
Sure.
Some of them, we don't have records of what's on the private side.
Okay.
We have all of our records on the public
Sure.
side, but we don't know what's on the private side. So a lot of this has been going through our records and actually going onto the property. When we go in and change meters out, we are checking the property material. So a lot of this has been found through the last few years.
Okay.
So as we find them, we contact the property owner and we give them the information on how they can get their service replaced free of charge.
Are these single-family homes owner occupied?
Some are duplexes, multifamily. Some are tenants. We deal with the property owner on it.
So we're subsidizing people's investments, with rental units and that kind of stuff?
In the name of public health, yes.
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 Okay. I just want to make sure everything's...
We do not, we want to get, for public health, we want all the lead services out. And a lot of these, just to clarify, are lead. They're galvanized, but they were downstream of a previous lead service. So under EPA law, they say that
There's particles.
there's particles.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, the only one, and I don't know if it'd be for you or Director Ellenbecker here, recommendation to do a general obligation bond versus any other type of funding source. I mean, it's going to get repaid anyway, right, over 10 years? It's a
Correct.
10-year note?
Yeah, it's a safe drinking water loan through the DOA, and that's what they call it, is a taxable promissory note. That's their funding mechanism. Versus the water utility sells revenue bonds or,
Right, they directed us which way to go and whether or not, like you said, we didn't go out to see if it was a state, it's sort of like a state trust fund.
it
loan.
is basically a state trust fund loan, but it's called a safe drinking water
Designed
loan.
for this purpose?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's all I wanted to verify. Good.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion, oh, we already had a motion up there, right?
Yep,
Do we have a motion?
We do, yeah.
in a second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Can you
Motion-
repeat what the motion was?
Sorry,
I think I did it.
if I can motion to
And
approve.
Bill,
Yep.
second.
Thank you.
Okay, number 3, consideration with possible action regarding a budget amendment resolution request from the Department of Public Works to reallocate salary savings from unfilled positions to purchase the Thank you. Civil infrastructure mapping system for the amount of $70,000.
And that is spelled correctly, just so you know.
Do you want to speak to it?
This is actually a two-part request. The second part of it would be, is going to be at Improvement Services Committee, so we're not we're not asking you to approve the purchase of the software. All we're asking you to do is do a budget amendment to make the funds available so that Improvement Service can talk about the software itself tomorrow. Short answer is every 2 years, in odd-numbered years, we have to go through and assign a numerical rating known as a PASER rating, Pavement Surface Evaluation Rating, to every street segment in 456 lane miles of streets across the city. That takes about 560 hours worth of staff time to do. The staff have been trained in the PASER rating system, but it's subjective. It takes human interpretation to do that. What we're looking at, Assistant Director Burnett has been in contact with the people who make this civil software. We did a demonstration on 5 miles worth of road earlier this year at no cost to the city. We like what we saw. We're looking at getting a computerized version of that software. So it takes the human bias out of it and provides a little bit more consistency in the rating. $70,000 is what we're estimating the expenditure to be. So we didn't have that budgeted. How do we pay for it? We currently have unfilled positions, so what we're looking to do is to do a budget amendment, taking unfilled position salary and benefits, reallocate that into consultant services so that we can afford to buy the software. We do not come looking for new money from this committee. We have been very, very good about reallocating the money you've already given us. So all we're looking for is the budget allocation tonight.
Questions? Is this an annual fee?
This would be every other year in odd numbered years, we're gonna have to find the money. But for this year, we're asking for a budget amendment from unallocated salaries, or unspent salaries and benefits that have been previously allocated.
Okay, and you know, just quick math, right? It's the equivalent, at 560 staff hours, that would be the equivalent of $125 an hour. So if you figure staff time plus benefits and all that, right? I mean, it's probably not out of line with,
Fully loaded, yeah.
right? And again, I don't know what level of employee we're putting out there.
Well, and again,
Yeah.
that's the discussion tomorrow night.
No, I get that, but
Well,
we're also asking for funding, and so if I want to know if I want to authorize the funding, I want to know if it's a good investment, right?
it's a good investment. It's a very good investment. It's also gonna free up the staff for those 460 hours. It's gonna cut the staff time down from 560 to about 100, which will allow those staff to be reassigned to other tasks that are currently not being completed due to lack of staff time.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think the expectation here now, again, is every other year, right? There'd be a new $70,000 request that would come in the budget. So just, you know, I don't think we need to necessarily contemplate that now, but just that would be the expectation, right?
With savings on the other side of it, right?
It covers 2 years.
With
It's
savings
like-
on the other side of it. I mean,
About
it'll cover 2
$35,000.
years, we'll have to pay for it, but we'll still see the employee savings.
Well, you're going to see reallocation.
You're gonna see reallocation.
Unless
But
you
that
reduce
will
your
be
salary line.
that will
by
be the director's
$70,000.
responsibility to build into their budget.
Okay. So you have to find the money then.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve and then let the INS committee.
I'll second that.
To the software, yeah.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Director Grenier. Number 4, consideration of possible action to approve the award of the official newspaper for the City of Green Bay to Press Times for the period of June 1st, 2025 to May 31st, 2026.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, who has you? Good? Do you want to speak at all, otherwise we'll vote?
Thank you.
I was gonna say, I don't think there's much discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Number 5, consideration with possible action regarding 2025 budget amendment resolution for unbudgeted overtime for special events.
To approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Informational, 2025 contingency account, $25,000. The next finance committee meeting will be held June 3rd at 4:30. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.